Welcome to the Lynn Community Television Show, a program in which we focus on organizations working to make their impact right here in the city of Lynn. And boy, howdy, do we have a great show for you today. We're going to be focusing on the questions that you'll see in the ballot when you go in and vote on March 14th this year. So here with me today, we've got some Lynners, but you guys are also campaign leadership. Don Castle, who's the president, and Gary Welch. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay, Gary Welch, member of the Protect Our Reservoir, Preserve Pine Grove. So we're here today to talk a little bit about these questions and offer these guys an opportunity to explain their side of the story. What we do to develop these questions is we'll attend public forums, we'll receive feedback via our social media, and we'll work in cooperation with the leadership from each campaign to offer these guys a platform to explain why they're advocating for a yes or no vote, depending on what side of the argument that they're on. So we're going to start the show off with just kind of reviewing the questions in summary for you, but before we get too much into that, I just want to give my guests an opportunity to explain who they are and how they're involved. Gary, let's start with you.
Sure. I'm Gary Welch. I live on Bellevue Road up in Pine Hill. I got involved in this through Don Castle, basically. We're very concerned about the choice of one of the sites that the city is proposing for one of the schools.
All right. Don?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name's Don Castle, lifelong Lynner, prior to Lynn Public Schools. Also live in Bellevue Road in Pine Hill, and when we heard about one of the public forums about building a new school, my neighbors and I and many of us got involved, and we wanted to figure out what was going on.
All right. So Gary, just kind of explain to me quickly, you know, in a nutshell, your stance on this thing.
Certainly. Well, if I could, I'd like to address who we aren't.
Absolutely.
Because we're being cast, I think, in a negative light, and we're being cast as being anti-education, and we are not anti-education. We love the public school system, and a lot of our followers have gone to Lynn schools, have kids in the Lynn schools. They wouldn't be doing that unless they trusted the Lynn schools. We're not anti a new building, because we had a meeting at the Marshall School. It's gorgeous. We want that for our kids. We think our kids deserve that. And we're not NIMBY activists. Dawn and I live in Pine Hill. We're not really in any danger of something being in our backyard. We're just proposing, we're opposing one of the sites that the city is proposing for the school, and that would be the Parkland Pine Grove site. We just don't think that's the right site.
All right, great. Thanks for the insight. Don, anything to add before we go into the summary of the questions?
Just well said by Gary. We just felt that the process has been grotesquely unfair. The group, Protect Our Reservoir, Preserve Pine Grove, put a 85-page packet together. We sent that off to the MSBA in Boston with dozens of concerns. They asked the city to answer our concerns, and as of today, I believe it's February 21st, 2017, the mayor and the superintendent has not responded to one of our requests, not one of our questions. No one's answered our environmental concerns, our traffic concerns, our eminent domain concerns, and quite frankly, I'm sure we'll get into it, but the financial aspect of this site is enormous, compared to other sites. But I think the process has been really unfair, and if we have neighbors in Pine Hill on the other side of Parkland Ave, on Bassey Road and Thistle Street in Parkland Ave. They've been in their homes 40, 50, 60 years. They're 70 and 80 and 90 years old. One person's 90 years old. And to not have one neighborhood meeting with us and answer our concerns is not only wrong, it's unfair in this day and age of not having a neighborhood meeting.
Thank you for the insight, guys. If you're interested, reach out to the information at the bottom of the screen to find some more detail on this campaign. You can also reach out to these guys if you'd like. So we're going to go into the summary of these questions. These aren't the official ballot questions. You can go down the election office right here in Lynn City Hall and pick up the actual wordage. But we're going to cover these things in summary and offer these guys an opportunity to explain why they're advocating for a no vote. So question 1, in summary, is asking for a yes or no vote on whether or not the city shall take out a bond in the amount of approximately $188.5 million to be paid back over 20 years to pay for the construction of 2 new middle schools at McManus Field and the Reservoir site, with the state reimbursing the city for 80% of allowable costs for the construction of the 2 new schools. In your own words, explain why you're advocating for a no vote on question 1. Gary, would you like to take this, or should we pass it to Don?
Sure.
Gary.
I'll just say that we have no problem at all with the McManus site, which they're calling the West Lynn School. We have no problem with that whatsoever. The problem we have is the Parkland Avenue Pine Grove site. That's why we want to vote no, because we don't think that's an appropriate site. Unfortunately, they're tied together. You either get both or you get neither.
Right, right. Don, anything to add?
I will just add the map I have up here. This is the official City of Lynn Assessors map. We do acknowledge that the land is recorded with the City of Lynn. Our attorney, as well as the city's attorney, has done extensive title research. But what our position is, this is Pine Grove Cemetery. Here's Parkland Avenue. This site, when this piece of land, and here's the document verifying the annual report from the Pine Grove Cemetery Commission in the year 1893, purchased a piece of land that's in question. That's the actual report to the mayor and the city council in 1893. When this piece of land was purchased, Parkland Ave was not built yet. So the Pine Grove Cemetery on this side of Parkland Ave was one contiguous piece of land, including Lynn Woods, but Lynn Woods is protected now. But this piece of land went all the way from Boston Street through this area up to the woods to the golf course. Parkland Ave was built in 1920, so we can clearly prove it's Pine Grove Cemetery land. So that's one of the main reasons why we're asking people to vote no on the questions, as well as the financial aspects, which we can get into later.
All right, great. Thanks for the insight, guys. So let's move right on to question 2, because these are kind of connected. They're kind of working together, which is kind of unique in its own way. So we're going to kind of just drill through these things, give these guys an opportunity to explain in their own words why they're advocating for a no vote. But in summary, question 2 on the ballot is advocating for a yes or no vote on whether or not the city of Lynn shall increase property taxes to cover the cost of the bond for 20 years, and once the bond is paid off in 20 years, the property tax increase would be eliminated. In your own words, explain why you're advocating for a no vote on question 2.
And again, it all comes down to the Parkland Pine Grove site. We don't think that that's the appropriate site for a school. I'd like to address something. I think there's been a lot of information being disseminated that we have not been able to verify, saying that this is going to come to a $200 increase for homeowners. And I think one of our group gave a call to 3 separate city departments, the CFO's office, the tax collector, and the assessor's office, and not one of them have been able to confirm any amount that this is going to come to. They said, we don't know. And I don't think they were trying to be evasive. I think they were trying to be very responsive to a concerned citizen. But the fact is that we don't know where these numbers are coming from. You're saying 80%. We've heard it's more like 60% that the state is picking up. We think it's very, very vague on the wording. We'd like to see something a little bit more accurate, such as it's going to cost X amount per assessed, per $1,000 of assessed value. But right now, we're not seeing anything along those lines.
Yeah, you know, that was an interesting subject that I had seen. I was like, how do they know what this exact figure is? So you're advocating for a no vote on question 2 simply just based on the fact that you need more information to make this decision.
Well, we would like more information, but I think we're mostly advocating because this is the wrong site. The Parkland Avenue site is just wrong for all the wrong reasons.
Okay. Don, anything to add in regard to why you're advocating for a no vote on question 2?
All I would say is, if you ran your home and your home budget the way the city's running their budget, especially with this project, you probably wouldn't be in your home any longer. I've attended the city council meetings. Gary has, many of us. We have a couple hundred people in our group. On November 29th at the council meeting with the CFO, Peter Karen, I made some notes from the meeting. He informed the city councils that our Moody's rating dropped 2 notches to 1 step above junk bond status.
And the Moody's rating, what's this again?
Moody's is basically from Wall Street. They finance our bonds, they finance the city, and the city has to borrow money, as well as the state or other companies.
Okay.
And the chief financial officer, our rating went down to an A3, which is 2 levels, it dropped 2 levels. Basically what Moody's is saying to the city of Lynn, and the chief financial officer informed the city council on November 29th that the city had a $7.5 million net school spending deficit, because there was another mistake this year in calculating net school spending. It goes back to 2013. The original problem goes back to 92 in regards to retirees and current employees' health insurance benefits, how it's calculated. So there was another calculation problem again this year in the city hall. I'm not sure whose fault it was, but he informed the city council there was a $7.5 million deficit net school spending problem. And Moody's lowered our rating, and this is why they lowered our rating.
And
Right.
when your rating drops, you become riskier, you have to pay a higher interest rate.
It's like a FICO score.
How do people get this information? Just real quick before we get into the rest of these questions here.
I would have them go on YouTube and look at the city council meetings, November 29, 2016. I was there live, Gary was there live, I watched it on YouTube. Moody's indicated to the city of Lynn that our reserves are depleted. They expect our inability to produce a balanced budget. Moody's expect our inability to produce a balanced budget. Expect our city to either increase revenues or reduce costs to balance the budget. And the most important part, a third party is reviewing our finances, which sends a red flag to Moody's for our borrowing power. So with that said, the police department just got a small pay raise. They had to fund their own pay raise, which means cuts in the police department. That's wrong. The fire department won their arbitration clause. That has to be funded. Plus there's a $7.5 million net school spending deficit. And now we're asking the voters to borrow potentially $188 million. With the way these questions are worded, if for some reason, I'm not saying it's happening, the MSBA doesn't fund that project, we're on the hook for $188 million for 2 schools. Gary's right. Nothing guarantees 80%. It's actually 79.88%. They don't fund 180%. But all these other parts of the project, if this is approved, hiring new principals, hiring new schools, teachers, maintaining these new schools. I mean, the current state of Pickering is deplorable. I've seen the pictures. It should have never got that way. Whoever's in charge of maintaining that building should be brought in and put on the carpet. Paint and brooms don't cost a lot of money. So the school shouldn't have been left in that poor of a condition. But watch the November 29th council meeting. Dire financial straits, talking layoffs. Now we're out to borrowing money for a new school. There are cheaper alternatives, cheaper sites, and we'll get into that. But we just ask people to really, and the $200, Gary's right. The average home in Lynn, I believe, is $260,000. Anyone's home over $260,000 will be taxed more than $20.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you guys for the opening remarks, the insight on why you're advocating for no votes on question 1 and 2. So we're just going to get into some of these questions. Again, these questions are developed in part with the leadership from each campaign, as well through social media feedback and via feedback by attending these forums that have been going on throughout the year. So we're going to kind of just talk about this openly. Pedro, how long do we have left in this program? About 12 minutes. Okay, so we've got 12 minutes to answer these questions. We'll fly through them. First question that we've got here, briefly describe the sites that were recommended for this project and just list some pros and cons of each. I'm sure you guys have something prepared. Don?
I think Don's probably more
Sure.
prepared to address that.
I just want to say that the school site selection committee was basically appointed by the mayor, and our issue was that they met during the day, and a lot of people that work full-time couldn't attend these daytime meetings. The parent representative and the teacher representative and other representatives that are on the committee were busy during the day working, so a lot of the meetings they could not attend. They did offer 10 or 12 sites. I reviewed the sites. I was on the website last night, and they offered Pickering, the current Pickering site. Okay, this is a direct quote from the website. If they built the school where it is, it's a current site, 3.5 stories high, adding an addition to the current school, which would hold 620 students. The second wing would be off the floodplain on the park. There's a misconception up there that they have to build on this big park where it floods out. This is their own website. Second wing off the floodplain, off the park. They could rehab the current school. Another misconception on that Pickering site is this cost of a pipe. I've spoken to engineers, I've spoken to MWRA. The cost of this pipe has gone from $300,000 to $800,000 to $3 million. We don't know what the truth is because no one will answer our questions. Another really important fact, which I really want people to understand about, they're saying with misinformation. When this project started last September, when we got involved, we saw the original projects for Magnolia, for the Pickering site. It was $68 million, significantly less than the Parkland Ave site. All of a sudden today, the project's $83 million. They've increased it by $15 million. I'm not sure why. I'd like to get an answer on that. Why the site we prefer on Magnolia has gone up $15 million in about 4 months.
Our belief is because we're challenging the Parkland Pine Grove site as being the most expensive, and all of a sudden they're finding all of these things that they mysteriously did not include in the original estimate.
Exactly.
And so we just think they're trying to steer things their way, and I don't believe that what they're saying is accurate as far as the cost here.
Another site was Breed. I went to Breed. I went to Coven Elementary, Breed Junior High, and Lynn Classical. This is from their website. They're talking about addition to Breed, a much cheaper alternative. The parking lot on the east side, up to 740 new students, The parking lot is easily be replaceable. It's a workable site, Breed Junior High. Parkland Ave site, these are quotes now from their website. Next to pristine reservoir land abutting Lynn Woods, significant exposed ledge and steep knolls. Quote, development on top of ledge and permitting adjacent to the reservoir would have to be handled carefully. These are our concerns that never been answered. Union Hospital site, people are talking about Union Hospital. I always under the impression that they had to rip down the hospital, wait for it to close. They did a study, I found this on their website. Union Hospital, there's open space in the rear of Union Hospital, but it does have significant wetlands. The site was tested with the same footprint of the sides of the new Marshall, and it fits quite easily while preserving the main hospital building. They never told us that. They've always said, oh, we can't wait, the hospital has to close. Federal Street, one of the best sites, across from the new Market Basket. Desirable physical characteristics, not one environmental problem, not near any natural resources, and plenty of room. Right on Federal Street.
And just to compound on that one, that's all paved anyway. So you're not increasing impervious by putting driveways through there, parking, buildings. Basically, when you're going with the Parkland site, you're taking 12 acres of mature forest land and turning it into an impervious surface. And that it just, if you start thinking there about the road salts, for instance, that you have to put down on the roads, all the vehicles going in and out, it's going to be totally different. If you had it on a paved site, you could collect it, put it into a storm drainage system. Mm-hmm. There aren't any storm drainage systems up by the reservoir. The water is going to find its way either into the wetlands, into the reservoir, or into the water table. None of those are what you want.
Okay.
In the road, no one knows this, from Parkland Ave into the site is a mile long. You know, kids walk a mile out of the site just to get to the bottom of the road and then possibly walk through the cemetery to go home every day. A mile in. The road's a mile in. And there's a couple other sites. The GE sites weren't doable. I guess there was other eminent domains and other issues with the acoustics at the GE sites. They talked about GE Park, Barry Park, but there's two sites we wanted to have them look at. Rockdale Ave. There's a significant piece of land on Rockdale Ave. I believe it's for sale.
Okay.
There's no eminent domain takings. In Gowdy Park. Gowdy Park is up in Ward 1. It's 388,000 square feet. Never answered that question why Gowdy Park wasn't looked at. If Gallagher Playground was looked at, why wasn't Gowdy Park? It's on one end of the site, on one end of the district. Gowdy Park's up on the other end of the district. So these are things that no one ever looked at.
Something that doesn't seem to be have been considered is the McManus, the West Lynn School, is going to be 18,000 square feet. It's going to be 4 stories, and these buildings are being sized not for today's needs, but a decade out and more. So the Breed School, the Pickering School is 13,000 square feet, 3.5 stories. So anything from Pickering will more than fit into the McManus School. So our thought was, why not take the McManus School, build that one first, and you can't do it now with the way the ballot questions are, but build the McManus School first, move the Pickering kids into McManus, and then tear down the Pickering and build the new school that you want. And if it doesn't fit, you can make it, instead of 3.5, you make it 4 stories. But basically, and you don't even have to change Google Maps. Everything's the same as it was. The same kids are going to be going to the same location, and everybody wins. Nobody loses their house. We don't lose the reservoir, and the city gets their school.
Okay.
If I could just expound just a little bit, is on what Gary said, is there's a misconception. People feel that we may be giving false information, which we obviously disagree with, but I read the MSBA rules, and by no means am I an expert in MSBA rules, but people are saying if we don't get the funding now, we're going to lose it for 10 years. That's a 100% falsehood. I read the rules myself. It's a needs-based system. So if Lynn, on July 31st of every year, districts submit needs, building needs, rehabs, maintenance needs for their schools with the MSBA, July 31st. It's already almost March. Lynn has the entire plan together. They have 10 different sites they've evaluated. All they have to do is resubmit a different space or a different location this July. There's no line. It's not like you're at McDonald's and you're waiting to get in line. There is no line at the MSBA. They assess everybody's needs.
And if we need it now, we're going to need it in a year from now.
That's right.
And the advantage to that is it gives the city a year to get their financial house in order. Because right now, things are really rocky. That gives us a chance to regroup, find a way that we can actually afford this in a year from now.
Chapter 70B, Section A, MSBA rules. Number 1, priority shall be given to school projects needed in the judgment of the said board to replace and renovate a building which is structurally unsound or otherwise in condition seriously jeopardizing the health of students. I mean, come on, that's our school. We just resubmitted, like Gary said, with a different site.
Okay.
Another MSBA rule too is that
So
I'm
before I
sorry.
cut you off, so we got less than 10 minutes to get through about 9 questions
Sorry.
here.
Go ahead.
So we talked about the sites.
Yep.
You guys are pretty thorough on that. 10 separate sites. Talked about your pros and cons in regard to each of them. This middle school, the eminent domain's a big thing, and that's a lot of people are talking about that. Lynn erected the new Marshall Middle School. In the process, 2 homes and a garage were taken by eminent domain. Just briefly specify how eminent domain is going to impact this project.
Sure, and I'd like
Yeah,
to...
that's fine.
Okay. Eminent domain is where a government can take private property used for a public good. The Supreme Court has recently changed the definition, broadened the definition of a public good, but this is a more traditional use where a person's property is going to be taken and a municipal use would be done.
Okay.
The woman in question, her name is Janet Guancy, and she's in danger right now of losing her house through this proposal. And at this point, she went through a divorce, wasn't sure if she was going to keep the house. She kept the house. She took a second job, I think, and she's doing what we're supposed to do, which is paying your mortgage, paying your taxes. And at this point, she's not sure if she loses the house. And they do give you some money for relocation. They do give you some more on top of your assessed value.
Have they specified what that figure would be?
I don't know.
Okay.
I know that there was a general description of this made at a school committee meeting.
Okay.
But I think things were in flux at that point. But the thing is that she's not sure. When she originally applied for the mortgage, she had 2 incomes. Now it's one. She doesn't know if the bank's even going to give her a mortgage. Interest rates are going up.
Okay.
And so now so she's the one in danger of losing. But in fact, there are a number of people that we feel are losing in that area that won't be compensated, because now that her neighbors on either side, they're not going to have a quiet neighbor anymore. They're going to have a driveway going through. The buses are going to go through twice a day, and the road is going to connect up to Linfield Street through Averill and Shoemaker Street. They have such a quiet street now. You could have kids out there playing street hockey. They're not going to do that anymore because the rush hour or the school traffic is just going to be going through there all the time. Every one of those people has a deed that shows Pine Grove Cemetery as their rear line abutter. This is bait and switch for them because they knew that they were going to have a quiet backdoor neighbor. Now they're just going to have a very noisy site. I'm going overboard here. Go
No,
ahead.
The plans keep changing. And we don't know. Do you know how Mrs. Fonseca and Miss Guanci found out about their homes being taken?
I don't.
At a neighborhood meeting that we had. We had a meeting at the Hibernian, about 150 neighbors showed up. We had the maps, the recent maps, and they said, "Oh my God, there's my house." They weren't even notified.
Okay.
Takings are legal, like Gary said, underneath the Constitution and Massachusetts general laws. You can take a home. If they challenge it, it goes to court. The homeowner will get more money for their home when it goes to a judge, most likely.
Perfect.
Right.
Eminent domain. Thanks for covering that. So we've kind of answered a lot of these. We've been kind of jumping around back and forth. You guys are very full of information and insight. Love it. So a couple of the next questions. We're going to talk about how this land is encroaching on Linwoods and wetlands and your opinion on this. Where can people find more information? So we just kind of want to focus on this question in regard to where can people find some additional resources for their own to study on. So many in the community are suggesting that the land is encroaching on Linwoods and the wetlands. In your opinion on what is your opinion on this, and where can people find more information?
Yeah, this is not Linwood's property. This is Pine Grove property.
Okay.
And there are definitely wetlands there. In fact, the reason I think that their site plan keeps changing is they're trying to avoid all the wetlands that are there. That's why it's a mile-long driveway. We were under the impression that there is a registered vernal pool up near the Averill and Shoemaker sites. And those, in terms of mass environmental laws, vernal pools are pretty much sacred.
Yeah, you just brought me on to my next question.
Okay.
So in regard to a project like this, how are the impacts on the neighborhood and the environment considered? Is there a process in place already? We talked a little bit about eminent domain, what it's going to do for the neighbors on each side of that house that is up subject to it. So let's talk a little bit more about, the environment overall. Like, what goes into this? How do we find information on the impacts of the environment?
When they
in the
have a
neighborhood?
definitive site plan, they need to go in front of the Conservation Commission. There's no way they're going to avoid going in front of the Conservation Commission. And then they will have to review, there's a set of mass general laws that dictate how the project may take place. And then if the city has their own laws, those also have to be considered as well. Just so you know, there are, well, we know that there are hawks, deer, and coyotes out there, and there was a friend of our group who has not done an environmental inventory, but she is pretty sure that there are protected and endangered species there as well: whippoorwills, wood frogs, and fairy shrimp. So we believe that this is an environmentally sensitive area.
Okay.
We would just ask for that report. We have not been given that. We've asked for that in our big packet we sent in. We've seen not one environmental impact statement from anybody from the city. And it's amazing to me that the Lynn City Council, and I said this to them, they voted on a project without even seeing that environmental impact. I was at Mrs. Fonseca's home, and I'm not making this up, I'm in the driveway, and there's a deer that came up to her fence in her driveway the other day on that site. So, I mean, the more land we take, the more we encroach on these, on the wildlife in the reservoir.
And just as a side note, the MSBA requirements specifically state that site selection should be based on both the most cost-effective site and the least environmentally damaging site.
Right.
And until they started adjusting the price of the Magnolia site, this was the most expensive site, and it was the most damaging site as far as environmental.
All right. So the next couple of questions are going to be in regard to the schools. We're going to talk a little bit about the infrastructure, overcrowding, all this stuff that you guys know about. We talked a little bit about it beforehand. But, we obviously know that we need a school. We talked about this before the program. We talked about it at the beginning of the program. Lynn's got a number of buildings that are ranging from decades old to over a century old. How does this impact the Lynn Public Schools infrastructure?
Could I roll our answer into the next three questions?
Sure, absolutely.
One, which is that we have an aging infrastructure of the schools.
So the next three questions in regard to overcrowding
and
what
whether
benefits the student body and faculty could gain from the program,
right,
from the building. So
agree.
Have at it.
We agree. We are completely in agreement with the yes voters on this. We agree. The schools, the city would benefit by having 2 new schools. We just don't want it to be on the Parkland Pine Grove site. That's it. We agree with them. We'll be behind them. If they could find if they could do the Federal Street, if they could build it where the existing Pickering is, we'll be on their side next year.
Well put.
It's about being financially responsible. And I just want to add, everything indicates it's cemetery land. And for them just to simply state, oh, the city owns it. I mean, here's the documents. There's something that they're not showing us. We need to see why this is cemetery land, why every assessor's map, every map, international atlas map, has it as Pine Grove Cemetery. And all of a sudden, after 127 years, it's not Pine Grove Cemetery. And Gary's right. I'm a product of the public schools. My mother, my brother. I'm proud of Lynn Public Schools. I'm proud of Lynn. I'll be here my whole life. We weren't treated very fairly. We asked, if the process should have been more open. A lot of people have come up to me and said that. But I think in this day and age of our financial status with the city having a deficit, there's a cheaper alternative, and I think they should do that.
All right. Are you guys satisfied with that? For any closing remarks, anything else to add?
Can I read a letter from someone?
You got 1 minute.
This is a letter from, an open letter from Janet Guanci. She lives in Parkland Ave. She's the woman losing her home. I spoke to her. This is her letter. I am the homeowner of 97 Parkland Ave. The one house that will be taken by eminent domain. Please be advised that the number of homes that are being taken have changed almost every day and after every meeting. I have been waiting in silence for almost a year to find out if the city plans to take my home from me. I've chosen to write today because my councilman has posted inaccurate information about my situation. My family and I are lifelong residents of Lynn. We all attended and continue to attend Lynn Public Schools. Of course, I want the best for our children, and I want to keep my home as well. I have worked extremely hard not to lose my home after my divorce, and I won the battle. I never thought I'd have to fight for my home again. I remodeled my home from top to bottom, exactly how I wanted it. And for the city that I grew up in to threaten my security and keep me in limbo is causing a great deal of anxiety. The truth is, I don't know how much money I will be given for my home. I don't know if I will find a comparable home. And I don't know if I can get another mortgage or rate I can afford. So before we say it's just one home or the city will take care of her, please understand my worries about my home being ripped away. While I continue to wait, please vote no. There are other sites that are less expensive. The state funding will only be will not be lost for this site, and a new site can be chosen. They can reapply for funding this summer. People are getting false info out there, and please vote no on putting the school on Parkland Ave. I'm summarizing, I don't want to take too long, but that's from Janet on Parkland Ave, the woman losing her home.
Guys, I want to say thanks for coming onto the program. You did a great job at trying to squeeze all this into our required time. Pedro, how'd we do on time? Good? All right. Again, I just want to tell you guys who are watching at home, thanks for tuning in. Ballot's set to happen March 14th. You can go down to your local voting site and cast your vote there. If you want some more information on the ballots and the questions, visit the Lynn City election office for some more additional information. If you want to find out or get in contact with these two gentlemen and the campaign that they're working with, reach out to the information at the bottom of the screen. I want to thank my staff. I want to thank my volunteer Cal for coming in and filming this program. I want to thank you for tuning in. And I want to say thanks to Dawn, and I want to say thanks to Gary for coming in and giving us some time on doing the program. For the program, Lynn Community Television, here at the studios at Lynn Community Television, I'm Sean Donahue, wishing you all the best.